Leaders Global Solutions presents the Subject to Talent podcast, a hub for global workforce leaders to unleash the power of human enterprise. Listen in as we explore the most innovative and transformational topics impacting businesses today. Hi, I'm Bruce Morton, the host of the Subject to Talent podcast. Today, I'm delighted that I'm joined by Mark Hanson. Mark is the Vice President of Strategy over at Lightcast. They're a global leader in the labor market analytics space. And Mark leads the strategic initiatives of People Analytics, skill products and partnerships related to their open skills taxonomy. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. And those regular listeners will know we always ask the same first question, and that is, how did you get into this wonderful industry of ours? And to quickly give a synopsis of your journey to date.
Yeah, no, happy to. The short answer is I fell into it, and I had no career aspirations, didn't even know what this world was when I first started out. I was an accounting and finance major in undergrad, and so quickly realized that I love data and I love solutions. And through a series of dabbling in management consulting for a few years, jumping over to help run People Analytics at United Health Group for about 5 years, I got introduced to this crazy company called Lightcast that was working with labor market intelligence data. And I was like, oh, what's that? And they have some things about skills and, what is the skills trend? And I said, hey, this data is way too cool. The things that they're building around skills intelligence is way too interesting. So I jumped over to their side. So after being a customer for 5 years, I joined Lightcast and help build some products and help run just our general data strategy for skills and for our skills products and consulting. But yeah, I've been here about 5 years at Lightcast, and it's just been a wonderful world to tap into the HR tech world, as well as work with all of our wonderful corporate customers and management consulting customers, and our 75 HR tech partners as well. So we get to cover a lot of areas and get into lots of interesting situations with our customers and trying to bring the best data forward we can for making the solutions better and making their hopefully answering a lot of their problems and different questions that they have. Awesome.
And here at AGS, we've been partnering with Lightcast for about the same amount of time as you, actually, for just over 5 years. And we've seen many iterations of the organization in different names and how the organization has grown. So if you would please share with the listeners that journey that what's now Lightcast has been on and how you're positioned in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we rebranded about 2 years ago, and that was the result of a merger between MZ and Burning Glass Technologies. Both of those companies have been around for 20 plus years, doing a lot of the same things. And so actually, I looked back at some of the data. I think Legis has been a part of the kind of the MZ customer base for 10 plus years in its different iterations. Yeah. And so it's been a long standing partnership, and it's been a really fun journey of taking two powerhouse labor market intelligence companies and pushing them together, and really brought the best of both worlds of some rich taxonomy work that MZ had been doing in the past, and they had open sourced their skill taxonomy and their kind of title and occupation libraries. And then when Burning Glass came into the mix, they had some rich parsing technology and just ways that they were sourcing data, different ways that they were modeling the data. And so pushing kind of these two powerhouses together has really been a great match to push them together to really be, the market leader for talent intelligence and labor market information. So we realized that MZ Burning Glass would be a mouthful as a brand name. So Lightcast, the people smarter than me, chose a new brand to go with, and it's been a good journey.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's a great name, by the way, because you were certainly casting light on talent intelligence. I guess that's where it came from. So I love it. So in this world now, as you were just talking about earlier, the data has become so important for organizations from a talent perspective, but it's also become global. Back in the day, I've been in this industry 45 years for my sins, and it used to be domestic. I was in the UK and then the US, but that was good enough then. You give me the data in how many states do you have data for? And now we're truly in a world where organizations are rethinking how they get work done. They want to put the work all over the world. Therefore, they want to know where they should be putting it and how much they should be paying, right? So what's the journey the Lightcasts have been on to, expand your global reach, I guess?
Yeah, it's been a quite the journey because, like you said, for the many, many years, probably the first, 15 years of existence, we were really focused on the U.S. labor data. But then, as you work with larger organizations and the world became more global, you had to go beyond the U.S. borders to be able to get at where are those new talent pools? How do we understand, what talent's available, and where is the demand, and the customer base just expanded rapidly. So for the last 10 years, we've been on a mission to keep expanding country by country as much global data as possible. And it's really driven off the demand of the insights that our customers need. No longer people are tied to a desk and focusing on office strategies. I mean, that's still the case for some industries, but for the most part, we can hire workers wherever. And that remote strategy is really critical, especially when labor costs are tight and with shrinking labor pools that we're trying to tap into. We have to go global to find the right talent at the right price. And that requires a global data set.
Yeah. And so how have you stood up to that challenge and faced that challenge of gathering? Because we know that the further you go from developed countries, the harder it gets to get that data. So what are some of the tactics you've deployed to continue to grow that?
Yeah, we have always started with a kind of a government data foundation. Even when we, started deep into the U.S. and Canada and the U.K., those are, some very mature nations that have rich history and lots of mature data gathering practices and have just wealth of data points to rely on. Even in the U.S., we have data.gov, which pretty much has, everything you can think of from BLS and census data and everything. But that's not true as you go across the pond to different areas and different continents. Right. They're just not as mature in terms of the data gathering. They've never had that. The systems weren't in place. And so what we've tried to do is go after, say, which are the countries that have the best government starting data. Then we go after two big data sets that we always focus on is the demand data. So where is all that rich job posting data going? Is there a series of equivalents that are similar to Indeed and Career Builder and Monster, kind of where there's these job board sites that are housing a lot of this, or is it distributed across many? And then we go after profile and resume data to say, are there LinkedIn equivalents in different countries? And so we try to get this mix of government data, supply data through resumes and getting that granular data, and then going after the demand data. And that's a country by country practice because every country has its unique, available information. What's the breadth of it information? What's the depth of it? What languages are being used? So our team over the last 4 years has been really focused on expanding our language capability. What can we translate to? Expanding our partnerships with different vendors in each of those countries that are running those job boards and different supply data sets, and trying to bring that all together and harmonize that data, through our data structure and our taxonomies.
Right. And then, so it's almost, I guess what you're saying, you can't take a global approach. Although you're trying to create a global database, you're actually having to go country by country and make it very specific and very localized in that situation. Are there any, I think to my mind, a good indicator of where work is starting to get done now more and more around the world is when organizations start asking for data in particular regions or particular countries. It's a good barometer of where's next for the talent. So can you just talk to which are some of the hot countries or regions right now that you're getting asked about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really fun journey with our customers because we get some really interesting requests on, do you have data on Chile or Argentina? Or one of the latest conferences we just spoke at was a presentation to the World Bank, and the number one request was data on Uganda in Africa. And so we're like, whoa, that's interesting. And then they started talking to some of the participants at the conference, and sure enough, the most of the participants were from Uganda, and they're really seeking, like, how do we understand our labor market in some of the adjacent countries that we work within? And then those global firms are saying, how do we reach some of those untapped markets that we haven't gone after? Because often what companies do is they'll start to look at, oh, I heard that, there's really good, software engineering and tech talent in Poland, and all the companies rush there because they heard a couple success stories. Well, by the time that you get some of that information, if you're not an early mover, you've actually missed out on some of the cost benefits, maybe of some of the available talents that's there, and so then that quickly has wage inflation after you get more competition for all of that talent, and so that market isn't really a rich market anymore because it's either tapped out from a competitive standpoint or the costs are too high. So our customers are constantly looking for what are those new emerging markets where we can tap into some of that wonderful talent that exists, but it's certainly going to be cheaper than trying to hire someone down the street in Silicon Valley, where the wages are astronomical. And so we got to really spread out, for our talent strategy, where do we find the best talent at the right price to keep all of our initiatives running at an optimal speed.
So you mentioned Africa. Obviously, that I think that is, inevitably that is going to grow if you look at the demographics. So that we're going to have to we're just going to have to get better at sending work to Africa, is my view, because that's where the world's workforce is going to be in the future, a large percentage of it. What other areas? And I guess Latin America is still hot for nearshoring. Yeah. Southeast Asia is coming online now, and you mentioned Poland, Eastern Europe as well. Are those the hot spots?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Asia specifically, I mean, the Philippines has just been a wonderful booming area, and it continues to grow for a lot of our customers in terms of especially call center workers, and being able to have, native English speaking there. So there's some of these countries where they're easier to get into in certain respects for logistics and maybe some of the labor laws and things like that. There's others where the more connectivity there is, specifically in Africa, the better mobile technology is, the better that the internet connectivity, that just unlocks, a whole new world of available labor forces there. And so it's really, I'd say there's really not a place that's that our customers haven't explored. There is the unique scenario where you do want some concentration of labor, where you're not the first mover to go into some sort of place. You do want a few competitors there, just because there is the skills that are being trained there. The infrastructure is already built in terms of the local labor laws and being able to work within some of those countries. So there are some of those countries that are more difficult to work in that people avoid, different companies avoid. But for the most part, it's around the globe, people are looking everywhere they can.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that we start seeing like these trends of countries being known for specific skill sets almost. It used to be, Scandinavia are known for design, hence IKEA. That used to be the thing. And then now we think about even Egypt, where there's some real cool cybersecurity stuff going on. And it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. That whole areas of the world become known for certain skill sets, as opposed to, it used to be just labor arbitrage, right? It was just about, the cost of labor is lower there, so send the work there. Now I think it's not just that; it's even perhaps in front of that is, where is the talent?
Yeah.
If you tap that into universities, what are the universities producing around the world as well?
Yeah,
and doubling down on. Which is big challenge for governments, of course. Where should they be investing education?
Yeah, and you're hitting on really that kind of the combined strategy of the regions and countries that we work with is behind the scenes. The mission of Lightcast is to bring educators and government and private organization enterprise together to be using the same data so that we can create the right incentive structures, because businesses need the new fresh talent with specific skill sets, and they need to be partnering with the educational institutions around the globe to say, are you training for the things that we need? And that there needs to be that connection between them. And then the local governments are saying, how do we incentivize and bring the right tax incentives or the right programs and learning and development initiatives to bear. If we can get all three of those groups working together, it creates economic prosperity for everybody in those regions. And it's definitely okay to have some specialization, because that's what makes your region unique. and allows you to invest more dollars in the concentrated areas of where you're the best at. And I think that's a great thing if we can find that, because it creates meaningful employment, it creates growth opportunities, It attracts, these multinational companies that can say, yeah, we have our payroll services over here, and we have our, technical teams over in this country, and we have concentrations here. I feel like it kind of brings the best of the entire world together to, diversify that talent, but also diversify, sourcing that talent, because globally, if you're just focused on a singular, kind of country or, small region strategy, you're going to have problems finding all of the unique talent that you need to run your business, especially as technology changes and as your business initiatives change. So we do need that global perspective to make sure that we're finding the best, especially when talent markets are shrinking. So.
Yeah, that's right. I know, what a great mission and purpose for an organization like yours to have. Mm-hmm. And of course, the other thing we haven't mentioned, it's not for this podcast, but the AI work, obviously that's going to influence and impact as well, which skills organizations and countries and universities build. What are those skills we really need for the future that, as we move into more of an AI world? But that's for another day. So if we bring it back home for a second here in the US, what has been the impact for your organization on the new legislation around organizations having to be more transparent with what they're paying? I think, the bizarre example would be they're using these crazy broad range, from 50,000 to 2 million. But I'm assuming that getting past that, it's actually helping you the more transparent organizations are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So some of the new law changes in the different states for pay transparency have really helped us, because it's bringing to bear data that's been long hidden for a long time. Pay ranges and stuff were very secretive, and now people were. If you were in the know in certain organizations, but you couldn't really compare that across different companies, different regions. And so that was a hard data set to get at, and you'd have to do some complicated surveys and rely on, sample data and things like that. But now, through our, kind of data processing and aggregation that we pull that data through, we're able to see many more observations. And we have to do some data modeling to make sure we kick out the outliers, like you mentioned, with some of the obscure cases that they get through. Yeah. But for the most part, people are in a good enough range where we can get the relative, median ranges and kind of percentile sort of comparisons between the different areas. And I think that helps from one standpoint, from just that, broader transparency, so people know, but it's also really helpful for, just the intelligence that needs to be there to how do we supplement our current, talent management strategies and, acquisition strategies and compensation strategies. How do we start to understand the different complexities of the different markets we operate in? We need those signals from every spot that we can get. And pay has been one that's just been hard to nail down. And so this offers an opportunity to supplement some of the rich work that our compensation partners already use, and in those teams, they have something else that can be a daily changing number that they can see some of those immediate trends, and they can start to adjust the short-term strategies to complement their other, survey and different methods that they're using.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'd just like to touch on the partnership between our organizations, where we're really geeking out in a good nerd way about all around the skills-based hiring, skills-based organizations, and that model. I think that and we've seen that coming for a while, but now it's getting very real. Mm-hmm. And of course, that you can't do any of that unless you have that data and really understand what's behind the job and what's behind the individuals. So can you just share a little bit about the approach for skills-based hiring?
Absolutely, we can. Yeah. We made the push, about 5 years ago to go deep into skills, because that's the underlying data structure that gets us the most granular insights we can between learning, people, and jobs. And so we love the skills-based world. Because of that, we need to move beyond a lot of the vague job titles that have been used in the past, the vague job descriptions that are written for different jobs. We need to get more precise in our language, and we need to get down to kind of what we could like to call the building blocks of learning and work, to understand, what skills do we actually need to drive our business? How are we screening and recruiting? Are we asking for the right skills? Are we pushing the right learning content that's relevant for our jobs today? A lot of learning content is extremely old, and it doesn't get checked very often to see if it's still relevant. Our companies are pushing us to look at, unique career paths, and how do we think about talent mobility within our organization. And skills gives us that lens to look through our jobs to say, well, where are there skill overlaps? Are there unique career paths that we're missing? Is there interventions we can take through learning? And when we do need to go buy talent externally, where do we find that talent? So that's where a mixed strategy of organizing your internal data and mixing it with external labor market intelligence really brings a holistic approach to say, we can understand what's shifting in the labor market. We can understand how our business is shifting at that more granular, detailed skill level. And it gives us the something to anchor on, kind of a connective tissue that speaks the same language, that we can search more effectively for the right pockets of talent, be screening and looking for the, sourcing from the right markets and the right, different areas of the world that we can pull in this talent. So skills is really that connective tissue that binds all of this data together really well. And it's going to be needed in the future for how dynamic the businesses need to be to pivot into new initiatives and new strategies and new products that they're rolling out, and how do they need to shift their workforce, and how do they be strategic with some of that, build, buy, borrow strategies that we love to talk about. Skills gives us the mechanism to be able to make precise decisions in that area.
And how can organizations who are just starting that journey or thinking about going on that journey, how do they start to understand and shift that mindset of how work gets done compared to who should I hire?
Yeah.
What would your advice be there?
Yeah. And so we love to talk about this with our customers, because there really is a shift in what used to be kind of a job-centric mentality for HR, and saying everything is around this job and we got to hire, for this particular job. Well, it's pushing more towards a people-centric world where people are not just static anymore. They don't sit in a job for 20 years and then retire or move on to this, something similar. It's really about, we're learning at a faster pace than ever through, multiple means on our phone and through, YouTube videos and TED Talks and whatever it might be. People are just very dynamic, and the projects are shifting so fast within companies that you might get hired into one particular job, but you end up supporting all of these different adjacent groups based on the most critical items. And so people's work is also flexing beyond this, artificial constraint of a job title. And they're picking up, more project work on the most, we saw this through COVID, like every company had to shift their strategy to what was most important. And that means people needed to flex outside their comfort zone because business was not running, as we normally had it. And so skills based approaches help us to get people tied to the right things that are important, whether it's projects or it's newly developed jobs that are critical to run our business. And we need to have that flexible architecture to say, well, people are learning new skills on the job. They're learning, and flexing beyond their normal day-to-day, kind of career path that they're sitting on currently. We need to start to align that. And the beauty of a lot of this technology, the reason why there's been such a push the last couple of years into a skills base is really the artificial intelligence, the dynamic, processing capabilities of all the technologies that are being used to run HR. We're actually able to get to that lower level without such a manual lift. So that's accelerating a lot of these conversations, that we can be much more strategic in our workforce planning, in our talent management strategies.
Yeah, that's a great point, because without AI, this stuff is almost impossible. If you've got thousands of employees, you just never get to it. And so do you have an example you could share just to bring that to life for how, when one of your clients is thinking differently about who to hire and what the work to get done and so on? Yeah,
absolutely. We've seen a lot where in what was called kind of the Great Resignation the last couple of years, where people were, just leaving. It actually was more of a great shuffle. People were moving and getting poached by different companies because when they went out to look in the market, the supply was really low. And so you'd have to start poaching folks. So our customers have been really creative with saying, how do we look at adjacent labor pools that we maybe have never looked at? And we should look at it from more of a skills-based perspective instead of just okay, we got to find someone with that exact job title and let's move them over to this position. One of my favorite stories, and he's still a good friend of mine at United Health Group, we had an opening for a data science lead on our People Analytics team. So it was an HR job, very specific to analyzing all the rich people data that we were trying to, model things like predicting, retirement and things predicting turnover, kind of creating all those fun models. And we started looking and we looked everywhere, and it was just tough to find someone that had exact data science HR experience. Like, it just is still relatively new and the labor market's small. And so we expanded a little bit and we started saying, like, we should just take a skills-based approach and look a little bit broader. Well, we found a guy that he was an epidemiologist at a children's hospital. And we're like, okay, on the surface, this doesn't look anything close. Yeah. And when we interviewed him, we're like, wow, this is the perfect candidate, because he had all of the core underlying data analysis skills. And he's like, oh yeah, analyzing health outcomes in kids is the same exact models that I would use to predict, turnover within, this particular division. We're like, oh my goodness, you're exactly right. And sure enough, he was a wonderful hire and built a whole team around him. And that's just something that we don't think about, of what are those unique talent pools that we could be tapping into that we would have been blinded to if we were dead set on one sort of particular type of job we were thinking about.
And it just dawned on me that you yourself were a great example as well, the way that you got to Lightcast, right?
That's right.
You came from a completely different industry, but the skills were there.
Yeah, I started off as a financial planner with my accounting and finance degree, and I quickly ran away and saw the light. So
there you go. Yeah, so they'd have never found you by doing a search on your job title on a job board. That's a certainty. So that's a good example. So as we think about that, and I know the journey we're on together and we're partnering with in terms of helping continue to grow that database of knowledge. And I've got a great question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot here, because there's the two different terms that are used are taxonomy and ontology. And I'd love you to have a crack at explaining in layman's terms the difference between those two, and are they interchangeable?
Oh, they're not interchangeable, although our customers interchange them a lot, because it is nuanced. But no, they're really valuable for different purposes. And so I always love to talk about taxonomies as something that's very structured and hierarchical. Everything fits together and it has a one-for-one relationship of what category it fits into. And so I don't know where I heard this, but it kind of resonated with me, is, a taxonomy is kind of like a hardware store, and you have everything is in sections, and you know exactly what's in the plumbing section, what's in the, whatever it might be, fixture section, and everything is in order and it's categorized and you can find things quickly. When we reverse that and compare it to an ontology is really a flexible structure where there's organic relationships, and you can have many to many relationships connecting two different things at once. So it's kind of a free-for-all sort of cluster of things connected, and there's not always a logical reason why they're connected, but there are anchoring kind of node points where things are connected. And so I like to liken that to, it's not a perfect example, but it works like Costco. You can walk into Costco and you can pick up, a hammer, and you can pick up your vegetables, and you can pick up a new computer. It's all there, and it's all kind of connected, but there's not a lot of logic to it. There's not really clear sections either. You're kind of just wandering around, and you find all the things you need randomly, and it's all there. So that's how I liken that. And really, ontologies are great for understanding meaning behind things. How are things connected beyond the specific question you're answering, versus when you're working in a taxonomy, there's sometimes you want things structured. You're like, I want to know which occupations are underneath this, functional area, and underneath those occupations, which titles are most relevant. And so we want to look at things that are closely related, versus when we look at skills, oftentimes we love to talk about our ontology. We use our aggregate data at Lightcast we call it our daily changing ontology, because we're seeing these unique relationships of skills showing up in new pockets of industries and occupations that we never would have thought of, because there's just technologies being used in different ways. If you think about looking at like a ChatGPT or prompt engineering and anything with large language models, it started in a very tight technical group, and now that skill has branched out into marketing, into writing, into all these areas that people might not have anticipated. And that's more of an ontological view. It's connected to many things. It doesn't always fit in a tight little box.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. I will remember those examples. That will help me explain it in the future when people ask me. So I appreciate that. So as we're wrapping up here, I'll put you on the spot, but we like to ask our guests the crystal ball question. So how do you think, if we pick a date, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, how would organizations be using Lightcast type data in the future differently to how they're using it now? Or what will it evolve to, I guess?
Yeah, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, what we're going to see is an even deeper shift to that people-centric view of work. And what there's some great material out there that's called Work Without Jobs. And so how do we think about a truly flexible workforce that is built off of understanding people as a set of skills, and those skills can be deployed anywhere in the organization, and they're not going to be tied down by functional areas or specific job families that they need to fit within, but they're going to be fungible, and the work flexes based on a project basis versus a singular role that you do within a company. And as technology expands with AI and the understanding of the underlying data components through a skills lens, that is going to completely unlock how flexible an organization can be in the future. So I think Lightcast data is set up perfectly for that, because we're already mapping the global labor market from a skill perspective. And as organizations start to dabble in this and find the pockets of where this more work without jobs concept would latch on, it's going to really not only help organizations flex to the most important things, so that we hopefully can see less layoffs and things like that, and less knee-jerk reactions. We can redeploy talent much faster, but it's also going to be a wonderful thing for the employees and workers out there, so that they can truly see how their skill development and where their skills are being deployed and what's the value of that. And so we should be able to see more direct, kind of compensation impacts, as well as just longevity to be able to work on the most critical things and not be tied into one particular, area where, you might have a bad boss, or you got put on, kind of on a bad team under doing a certain role. It's like, no, we can be more fungible. We can flex the team, and that data connectivity is going to require a lot of horsepower from a data processing perspective, but also the rich taxonomies and ontologies needed to make those connections as well. That's
fantastic and so well put. Well, let's end on that positive note. That's I like it. So thank you so much again for your time today. Been great fun chatting with you. Love our partnership. Where can listeners go to find out more about Lightcast, or even yourself?
Yeah, lightcast.io. So we're a little bit old school with our not the .com. So get to lightcast.io. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Mark Hanson on LinkedIn. I pop up right away. So yeah, if you search for Mark Hanson at Lightcast, I'll be right there, and would love for anyone to connect. And Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure and been such a joy to work with your team over the years.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have questions, please send them to subject2talent@elitistglobalsolutions.com. Follow us on LinkedIn with the hashtag subject2talent, and learn more about AGS at elitistglobalsolutions.com, where you can find additional workforce insights and past episodes. Until next time, cheers.